You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, welcome to Don't F with the Original.
With Nicholas, I'm the video game correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I am Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. Today we're taking a break from our usual reviewing activities in favor of a more free-flowing conversation about foreign remakes, which is why we brought a special guest today, Dennis P., who some of you may remember from our very first episode of the Dreamer's Edge podcast.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Alright, so we separated the foreign movie remake from the other remakes. And let's talk about why. Why are those different? Do they follow a different rule? What's the deal?
For that, would you say also that maybe different cultures make, different movies, and I think that's maybe one of the rules, is that they kind of address their own culture, so to speak, or...
But does the remake do that?
The remake, I think that's where the remake misses.
Yeah.
A lot of times, right?
What they do with the American remakes is that they take the story and they bring it over to America. They did that for The Killing recently. And
Yeah, they make it more relatable to an American audience who might not be able to understand, this is the situation in France and this is why it's funny. So we're going to make it, in the United States. So, we're kind of going to have kind of the same jokes for comedy, for example, and it'll be funnier for them than, if we talk about the rivalry between Paris and Marseille in soccer. Americans are not going to care about that, really.
Yeah, but doesn't it make it? I mean, how are you going to relate that? Let's say in the States, and
well, then you make it about baseball against New York and Boston. But
God,
you can if it's like a few jokes about like that, you can just really you just remake it like that, and you just make it more current so that audience can relate to it a little more.
yeah, you sort of have to make cultural parallels.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon because, I know you watch foreign movies in their original language.
Yeah.
You're very much a stickler for that. But
Very.
as somebody who has worked in subtitling and translation for movies, I'll tell you right now that a lot of the references, we Americanize them on the DVD. Because, if they make a reference to a TV show that's only in Hong Kong or whatever, obviously nobody's going to get that. Even if they're interested in hearing the original language and reading the subtitles, that doesn't mean they know that people at 7 o'clock watched this show in Hong Kong, And so you would try to find American equivalents like Entertainment Tonight, that's more Canadian, but things like that, what people watch at that time, or at 8 o'clock, The Simpsons on a Sunday, because if we didn't, it was like, oh, I'm watching this movie, I'm not going to try to make up a Chinese name, because that's just offensive, but you're going to watch that as an audience and go like, I don't know what that means, and so you lose the fact that it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So, because I'm sensing a little bit of disapproval over the transfer of culture, but I just want to point out that even in the translated versions, even the subtitles, you get already a little bit of transfer of culture.
Maybe a little, but you're still keeping, I think, the essence. In general, compared to remaking completely with even different actors and different
Oh, even if it's the same actors, like honestly, Les Visiteurs, which was changing to an American remake, they kept the same actors. That's terrible.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I find when you remake a foreign movie in general, it's you're kind of inviting like disaster. I find it's harder to remake properly. I find in general.
It depends also on certain things. Like for le Dîner de Con, the Dinner for Schmucks. They could have remade it completely, and remade it the same movie in the United States and, made the humor more American, and it would have been fine. When they changed it completely, first, to make it Americanized, that's exactly what you're talking about, that they completely ruined the movie, because now they're trying to make characters sympathetic, and then the schmucks are messing with them. They're messing with their lives. How the character's sympathetic, you don't want that to happen to him, so it kind of messes it around, so... I can see where you're going there, but in another, kind of thing, just taking the same example, French comedies, the pacing in the humor is very different. Like, I remember watching the Disney Cohen, I was like, is this a comedy? Because this is really not funny. And then, because they set up the joke for like 15 minutes, and then one joke happens, and it's hilarious. and then there's nothing else for 10 minutes, and then one joke, and it's really funny. It's completely different from the pacing of American comedies, where it's joke after joke after joke. So maybe that they remake it that way too to make it more appreciable for the market.
Speaking of French, maybe action comedy or whatever, let's say a movie like Taxi, where they remade it in the American version, and you know what? Even though it's the same director, Jimmy Fallon, and not to take him down, but I mean, like, and then they modified the Taxi, and
let's please take down Jimmy Fallon.
But you know what I mean? It's like, even though like they had the same director, right? The French director. If you take the fact that it's in France, the car, like the actor, just the way it's made, the culture, the little difference on that, and then they turn it into New York, and American Taxi with a Mustang and all that. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't translate well.
But there's one fatal flaw with Taxi, and it's purely conceptual. The French movie Taxi is hilarious because it's French. It's a French movie where a guy takes a taxi, and then for some reason he takes that taxi and walks into an American action movie, and that's what makes it hilarious, because you wouldn't expect a Parisian guy to step into a taxi and walk into an American movie. And that's what makes it hilarious. And so when you have the American version of it, where he's in New York, and suddenly he encounters big American movie action trope, there's like, well, yeah, you're in New York. Of course that's going to happen to you. You're in a New York movie.
Yeah.
They should have made it like
in France.
He enters a French romantic movie, when he enters a taxi, and you're like, what's happening?
That would have been cute.
Yeah, so, it just doesn't work for me, and I just say, you know what, there's the language, when you hear a foreign movie, it has this, it's more beautiful, it's different, and different culture, different, it's filmed differently, like you said, the jokes are set up differently. It kind of invites you, like, to enjoy that country's, way of filming, and, it's, it kind of invites you to get to discover something that's different and not always be the American version of, like, the world isn't all American, like.
But it is addressed to an audience that does feel that the world is all American, is the thing. It's the thing with us commenting on this particular topic was always going to be tough, because we're non-American. We're not the target audience of these American remakes. And on top of that, we're all three the sort of people who will seek out foreign movies. Neither of us are Chinese. It's Chinese or Japanese, and yet we all see those Chinese and Japanese movies. We go to Fantasia, and we actually adore these movies. We're not the target audience for these remakes. And I think it's important to remember that the majority of moviegoers in America, and Canada, to be perfectly blunt, like, this is not a case of me trying to belittle Americans in any way, are not that interested in seeing the rest of the world.
But that's my point is they should be. And,
and
my point is they should just try and see something outside of, whatever they've learned and are used to.
Yeah.
Just for fun, and just see if maybe they'll like it, Like, I'm not saying they'll say it's bad or anything, but they might just say, hey, you know what?
I think we're all playing devil's advocate because we all believe that there's nothing wrong with being open to the world.
Yeah.
And we like those movies, but we're trying to kind of maybe figure out why are they remaking them. And that's I'm trying to throw ideas of maybe that's why they're doing it.
To a certain degree, because we're talking about the quality of those movies and how to make these movies. And the fact of the matter is they're catering to an audience that we don't necessarily agree with. Or at least, I'm just speaking to myself. I don't want to speak in your name. But I don't agree with that audience. I think you should get out of your backyard once in a while and see what the world is like, because I would love to live in a world where the world is considered our backyard, not just our country. But I don't want to blame the filmmakers for that. They're catering to a specific audience. They have a job to do to cater to that audience. And so, like, for example, if we watch Le Dîner des Cons and The Dinner for Schmucks, I almost want to play devil's advocate for the creators of that movie, where maybe they didn't screw the pooch. Maybe they are just doing what's necessary to cater to that audience. And the case in point here is that director did address the problem you point out. Problem that they try to make the guys more likable, and they try to they sort of mess things around because of that concept.
Yeah. And
the movie actually has a dinner for schmuck in the Dinner for Schmuck, whereas one of the great ironies of Le Dîner des Cons is that you never get that dinner.
Yeah.
But he actually addresses that in an interview where he said, like, it's different. We had to go in a different direction because we felt that French audiences are much more willing to accept that they are mean people. Like, Parisians are Parisians see and understand themselves as we're not very nice people, but that's who we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And Americans don't see themselves that way. They see themselves that we are very likable. So the idea of portraying a bunch of Americans just being jerks to another bunch of jerks or being jerks to jerks, he was concerned that American audiences would never relate to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think he has a point. I think he might be right about that.
Yeah. But in a way, I mean...
But my question is this, though. How come, even though, we're not French or Parisian, okay? We're not. Yet we do enjoy that movie made in another country. So how come Americans can't enjoy it? That's my point. Why do you need to remake it? You know what I mean? Like, how come this French movie isn't remade for Canadians or for Italians or for the Japanese or something? That's my question.
There's several aspects to consider. First, when we're talking about the American market, we're talking about a specific type of mainstream audience, not all Americans.
Yeah.
The same way that we are not all Canadians. I think most Canadians are like the mainstream American market, where they would rather see American movies than foreign movies. And the second thing to consider as well is that even as Canadians or half Canadians or whatever, we have a very different national identity. America is number one politically and culturally in many ways, and that affects the way that the audiences feel about themselves and what they seek. The Canadian identity is a very much more fluid and difficult to define thing. There's a running joke in Canada that as Canadians, we are mostly defined by not being Americans.
Yeah.
I think that's wrong. I think there's much more of a united cultural trend than people give us credit for, but that doesn't change the fact that perhaps one of those cultural trends that unites us as Canadians is the fact that we don't feel particularly attached to the notion of being Canadian the way other countries are, the way the French are French, the way the British are British, the way the Americans are Americans. And that means that we are probably, as a culture, more open to seeing movies from other cultures than Americans or French or British.
Okay.
Because we're not as proud as being Canadian. Also, if we only limited ourselves to Canadian movies, we'd be watching 5 movies a year.
Okay, fine, but what I'm saying is that like every movie when it gets released locally and then worldwide, right? So why not enjoy that movie? That's a foreign movie the way it is, whatever it is, whatever culture it is.
Some people like subtitles.
Yeah, but
that's for one.
Yeah, it's true. Some people hate the subtitling, and I hate the dubbing.
I hate dubbing. I can't. For me, I like to see it in its almost purest form with a little bit of subtitling, obviously, to fully get it.
Well, okay, so we've established that we wish people would watch the original, but let's sort of veer the conversation more toward the remakes and talk about the mechanics of those. I think is perhaps something that's worthwhile discussing, and maybe will get us less angry letters. Because I think it's quite a challenge for the filmmakers to address an audience that's not interested. Because essentially what you're trying to do is like bring that foreign movie with that foreign sensitivity and that foreign humor that you like to an audience that by definition is not interested in it.
Yeah. And
that's sort of, just by saying it that way, I think probably most people can see where the problem lies. And I think some of them are successful. I think I want to credit, for example, Point of No Return, which is the remake of Nikita.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Very, very good remake of that. And you can see how they Americanized it in the right ways. Because they kept all of the things that make Nikita, and those are very French aspects. The fact that she is not a particularly likable protagonist.
Yeah.
The fact that her sense of identity is fractured at best. You never find that in American movies. Even when I say he has a fractured sense of identity, he's really just a rebel with a heart of gold that's just looking to find himself. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas Nikita truly has a completely fractured sense of identity. She doesn't really have a self that makes her relatable.
Okay.
And the remake, Point of No Return, keeps all of that. Jane Fonda makes a great job of playing somebody that at first look is a cipher. But then at the same time, they Americanize some aspects in the way that the story is told. Okay. The ending of Nikita, the French movie, has two guys, the two men who love her, talking about her when she's not there and explaining exactly what's going to happen for the coming years after the movie is over. It's a really great conversation. Mm-hmm. The American movie has the two guys just encountering each other at the doorway and just sharing a look, and the movie ends there. And it's a dramatic difference. Mm-hmm. But when I looked at it and going like, that's freaking genius, because it's true. In Hollywood filmmaking, it's so much more visual than French filmmaking. The French quite like language.
Okay.
The Americans quite like visuals.
Okay.
And I realized that I was watching that and going, he communicated exactly the same thing, but without words. And that's pretty freaking clever, because that's what American audiences are going to really react to. And I thought that was pretty clever.
However, also, the character in Point of No Return, her name is not Nikita, is it?
No.
No, see? So they kind of remade it, but they kind of made it their own, sort of speak.
Well,
because it's not exactly, well, even, are you saying, like, is it scene by scene the same, or is it...
The story is pretty much the same.
It's pretty much the same.
Yeah, the story is pretty much the same. The action scenes are filmed a bit different because it's in California and not in Paris, so obviously they don't have the luxury of these sort of claustrophobic aspects, which were so key to Nikita.
Would you say, though, that the fact that it wasn't called Nikita and the main actress wasn't Nikita, but it was similar, do you think that maybe maybe that's what's needed for a remake to be...
Well, think about it. She's in California. She's a secret agent in California. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She has to pass off for a normal person. Yeah. Good luck doing that. Being called Nikita during the Cold War.
Yeah.
I guess so.
You know.
Yeah. No. But you know what I mean. What I'm trying to say is that would that be maybe a recipe for a successful remake of a foreign movie?
Well, I think you have to
make it different enough, because the title's not called, La Femme Nikita, whatever it's called.
Right.
Yeah, wasn't it? Well, it was also kind of also an advantage because it was an action movie, and Americans love action movies, so the remake had kind of a better chance of working.
Maybe
than say The Ring, that is like horror suspense.
Although The Ring was a huge success.
Really?
Very,
Okay.
Huge,
yeah. The Ring remake by Gore Verbinski, who did Pirates of the Caribbean, is often regarded by American audiences as being superior to the Japanese movie. Mm. I don't agree with them. I like the Japanese movie more, but I think it's a sign of success from The Ring. It probably just appeals to American audiences more.
Have they even seen the original?
Yeah, some of them have, and they go like, oh, it's silly compared to Gore Verbinski did a great job with it, and I think it's like, yeah, he did a great job Americanizing it.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Because I think that's what people, the audiences relate to. We think it's superior because he really did a great job of linking it to Americana. Mm-hmm. Suddenly there's the horses, there's the gothic aspects of Americana instead of a more European sensibility of gothic or the sort of quiet aspect of the Japanese movie.
He kept all the same, is it the same actress that comes out of the... No,
it's a little girl in his version. Which, again, for me, doesn't really work, a little girl, because I'm like, I can kick you. And I was like she's crawling out. I was like, ooh, if you're small enough for me to kick you, I'm not going to be scared of you.
Yeah.
But that's me. I think Americans were more scared because the idea of a child being that murderous is scary for them. And it's regarded as a superior movie a lot of time by a lot of American audiences.
Okay.
Yeah, but that one, you know what though? That one was well remade though. I have to say.
You found?
I can't say it was like horrible or anything.
Because I thought it was, so that's why.
Horrible?
Yeah, I really didn't like it.
I mean, kind of made sense, I guess. I mean, if you're gonna remake a movie to appeal to the American audience, I guess.
But I think it does that part very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they wouldn't relate to like a Japanese thing happening.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the comments we get from Japanese horror movies is like, oh great, another girl with the Cousin It haircut crawling at you. Is like, why do the movies keep doing the same thing? And it's sort of like being of Vietnamese origin. It's like because that's what ghosts are for us. Complaining about that would be like me complaining about why do vampires all have pointy teeth? This is so stupid. That's what they are. But what I don't like about the Ring remake, it's written by Aaron Kruger, and it has all the Aaron Kruger stuff that I don't like.
Dimitri hates Aaron Kruger. If you heard any past podcast, guys, you'll notice a pattern here that we're developing.
Well, he has a hard time structuring his story, and just to sort of give context to this thing, what annoys me about it is that he has some of the same problems I have when I write. These are all issues that I struggle with, and he seems to struggle around the same issues, except he makes more money than I do.
You should get together, guys, and work on your fixing the same struggles there.
Work on your issues there.
Yeah, together.
And he's clearly not working on them. He's making so much money, so it's even more frustrating for me. But this movie never knows when to end, and it's sort of the Eric and Gruber thing. It's like, you've seen the original Ringu, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've seen it. You too, Dennis.
Yeah.
Okay, you know how at some point they unearth her body.
Yeah.
Now, in the Japanese movie, the movie continues after that, of course. And in the American movie, they follow the same path, except they add a couple of lines to the kid. And the kid goes like, "Oh, you didn't unearth her, did you?" And I'm like, well, now you just screwed up the rest of the act, because now we know what's going to happen. Something bad. It was way more efficient when you didn't say that, and then something bad happens. You're like, oh, great, you did that for nothing. Yeah. Now he goes like, well, you didn't unearth her, did you? Because that's going to make things bad. And then bad things happen. You're like, if you're going to have the kid say that, end the movie there.
Yeah.
Because that's the difference. It's suspense. But if you're going to have him say that and then have the bad thing happen, it's sort of like, well, you just telegraphed it.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, we're going to be hit by a car in 10 seconds.
Yeah! That's exactly it.
Go!
And then it does that thing that I think it's very American. I think American audiences relate to that. It explains everything.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, oh, yeah, she uses phone lines because in her past, when she was being studied before she died, she had a relationship with phones and blah, blah, blah. Oh, she had psychic... It's like, why are you explaining all that? Magical ghost powers is enough.
Yeah.
And people have to realize the imagination, what you could come up with, is a lot scarier than just being explained and all that. You know, like, it leaves more intrigue, it's more mysterious, it makes it more suspenseful and scarier.
And it's something to talk about with people you've just seen the movie with. You know, what do you think is happening? You know, if everything is pointed out to you point by point, well, okay, that was it.
And it can make you watch it again, guys. Come on.
And it's exposition. Exposition is boring.
Very.
You know?
But you said that Aaron Kruger, he said he doesn't know when to end his movies, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's just scary in itself. So maybe he's on to something.
Speaking of horror movie remakes, one that I actually like the remake more than the original, though. There are a couple. Might as well name them just to balance out the conversation.
Okay. Because
we're a bit one-sided right now. I like The Eye with Jessica Alba more than the Chinese Thai original.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that because Jessica Alba's in it? Or?
Yeah.
That helps.
Okay. What was wrong with the original, do you think?
The original tended to... Well, we saw it together, didn't we?
Yeah.
It tended a bit towards melodrama, I find.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, where you reach the end of what happens to her, you see it coming because it's a Chinese Thai movie, and of course they're going to find the most melodramatic end imaginable.
So you like the American ending better?
I like the American ending because it's a little bit more matter of fact. It's matter of fact. The horror that happens to her is not so over the top that of course it's going to end badly for her because she was well intentioned. It's more hurtful if she dies and all of that. Not that she dies in the Thai Chinese remake. I was just giving a vague example. You don't know what happens. It's not a spoiler. It's just more matter of fact in the American movie where it's just like, look, she encountered a ghost and then she dealt with it, and then whether or not she survives, I'll leave you to decide. But it's not one of these things where incredible irony happens and of course something, you know? I mean, it has some problems, which is my favorite part is that when she gets her new eyes that allows her to see ghosts, the first thing she hears is the bump of a ghost. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, did she get new ears?
Why did they call it the eye?
See, one thing is I didn't see that movie because I already saw the original one, and I don't think there's a problem with remakes for me. I don't feel the story is going to be that different, especially from foreign remakes. Since, you know, the makers they're kind of expecting the American audience not to have seen them, so why even change the story that much?
Right.
So that's one thing that makes me not like remakes. I will watch remake if I haven't seen the original because I'm interested in the story, or I'll watch whichever one my friends tell me is the better version. I guess it is a better thing. But I mean, I saw that thing with Jessica Alba, and I was like, I saw that story before, and I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Again, maybe I should stop watching foreign movies.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I think if we're all in a consensus about one thing, is that no.
No. You should keep watching them. There's obviously value there.
But I miss Jessica Alba.
But I think it's one of those rare examples where I like it better, and sometimes it's a good opportunity to sort of streamline some of the narrative quirks.
Okay.
I think the Thai movie Shudder, which is a terrifying movie. I
Really?
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. The ending will freak the crap out of you.
Really?
Yeah, it is sleepaway camp messed up in terms of ending.
Wow, I want to see that now.
That image at the end, just you're like, oh no, it's terrible.
Excellent. I have to see that now. Yeah.
And the American remake, which strangely is set in Japan, and I'm like, why? It's like,
is the original in Japan?
No, it's a Thai movie. It takes place in Thailand. And
Good
Wow.
What the? Why? Which leads to a lot of frustrating conversation with so-called horror aficionados who's like, well, I like the Japanese movie better. You mean the Thai one?
And the question though is, I'm going to interrupt you real quick on that. Is the ending the same? Did they keep the same?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's sort of where I was leading to.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
And this is the interesting part. I saw the director's cut, the alternate ending with the director's cut, and they got it right in the director's cut of the remake. But the theatrical release, which had been changed for I think various concerns with the studios and whatnot, screws the pooch completely because they shift the point of view too quickly to another character where the impact of it doesn't really work. Because something terrible happens to one character. In the Thai movie, you follow that character throughout the entire movie. What the remake did is they shift the point of view to the more sympathetic character, who is his spouse, who's a more sympathetic character. And again, I understand why they did that. American audiences like to follow somebody they like,
of course.
And the movie can still work, but they need to shift the point of view early, so that when the horrifying thing happens, we're invested in the right character when that happens. And the director's cut does that very well, where it shifts the point of view early enough that when that happens, you're like, oh my god. But unfortunately, the theatrical cut just sort of follows her as a through line, the spouse, and then this bad thing happens to the side character, and you're like, well, who cares? He's a side character.
That's an interesting point that you brought up. Do you think that maybe the remakes, like obviously they have the good intention, right, when they remake them, and maybe the directors or whoever decides to remake them probably have, like you said, the original in mind, its essence, its spirit, and maybe even its endings and all that. But maybe the problem is that when they try to Americanize it, the producers and maybe Hollywood maybe is a little bit more, dare I say, strict, and maybe chop up the best pieces of the remakes, thus making them usually inferior. Do you think that's a possibility?
I think you're right. I think the problem might occur at the production stage and not at the filmmaking stage.
Yeah.
Because let's not forget, like, just the movies they imported before they started remaking them, they used to chop them up. Dario Argento, which you recommended quite a few movies from him in a horror podcast, when they imported movies from him, they would chop them up and chop up the movies and sort of like, this is how you make a movie. And you're like, he's known as the Hitchcock of Italy. Are you sure you want to redo his movie? Because you're not known as the Hitchcock of your freaking house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's the big problem, and I think that's maybe where the remakes, at least for me, fail in general. Most of them.
Yeah.
And why I prefer the original.
Of course, sometimes the filmmakers screw the pooch as well. I'm thinking of One Missed Call is the movie I'm talking about. The Japanese movie was made, and I don't think it's that great, but people love it, whatever. And the American remake was made, and the filmmaker said, I refuse to see the Japanese movie. I just got the plot from it, and I'm going to do my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that sounds incredibly stupid to me. Because the plots of Japanese horror movies are nonsensical. Mm-hmm. They are not the part you ought to follow. They are the part that you ought to fix. This is why I brought up the Thai movie Shudder, because the American remake, for all that it screwed up the ending in the theatrical cut especially, they streamlined the narrative in a way that's way more comprehensible and therefore way more involving.
Okay.
They did fix some aspects of the movie. Or maybe they were fixed in the original version and the translation was bad and then got lost. That could happen as well.
That's possible too.
But when Miscall, he decided, I'm not going to copy the atmospheric quality of the Japanese movies, which are exactly what define the genre and make it so damn good.
Yeah.
I'm just going to take the plot, the part that's absolute crap.
Yeah.
That's like, for me, that's like going like, oh, look, here's a beautiful steak dinner. I'm going to take the Brussels sprouts and throw the steak in the garbage. Anyway. So sometimes I think the blame lies with the filmmakers, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a terrible idea. And for French movies, I want to get back to that a little bit, because I think French movies are impossible to Americanize.
Ah.
Really?
Yeah, French comedies are awesome. They're freaking hilarious. They're great. But they're hilarious because they're French. And I'm not a Francophile. Like, I'm not oh, it's French, it's better. I'm not like that at all. But they just have such a rhythm and this sort of neuroses that's sort of integrated in the culture.
That's the culture. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable, you know. You're enjoying another culture, the way they are, the way they speak, the way they act, you know.
Because the French express themselves what's called the Latin way. They're very bombastic and very passionate, but they're not flamboyant because it's just the natural way everybody is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how do you do that in an American culture? Be bombastic without being flamboyant,
Easy.
where being flamboyant is so integral to standing out in America.
What you do is you put Jimmy Fallon as your lead. As your lead remake.
For Jimmy Fallon. No, not for Jimmy Fallon. I like that we're focusing on Jimmy Fallon because I love Queen Latifah and I do not want her name tainted by Taxi. So it all falls on Jimmy Fallon.
Sorry, Jimmy. Nothing personal, man.
If you have any questions, comments you want to share with us, write us at mail@idiomatic.com or post a comment at idiomatic.com. We're also on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. And we will see you next time. Original language, guys. You're very much a sticker for that. But as somebody who has worked in subtitling and translation for movies, I'll tell you right now that a lot of the references, we Americanize them on the DVD. Because, if they make a reference to a TV show that's only in Hong Kong or whatever, obviously nobody's going to get that. Even if they're interested in hearing the original language and reading the subtitles, that doesn't mean they know that people at 7 o'clock watched this show in Hong Kong, you know? Mm-hmm. And so you would try to find American equivalents like Entertainment Tonight, that's more Canadian, but things like that. What people watch at that time, or at 8 o'clock, The Simpsons on the Sunday. Because if we didn't, it was like, oh, I'm watching this movie. I'm not going to try to make up a Chinese name because that's just offensive.
You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, welcome to Don't F with the Original.
With Nicholas, I'm the video game correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I am Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. Today we're taking a break from our usual reviewing activities in favor of a more free-flowing conversation about foreign remakes, which is why we brought a special guest today, Dennis P., who some of you may remember from our very first episode of the Dreamer's Edge podcast.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Alright, so we separate...
We're going to make it, in the United States, so, we're kind of going to have kind of the same jokes for comedy, for example, and it'll be funnier for them than, if we talk about the rivalry between Paris and Marseille in soccer. Americans are not going to care about that, really.
Yeah, but doesn't it make it... I mean, how are you going to relate that, let's say, in the States? And well,
then you make it about baseball against New York and Boston. But
God,
you can, if it's like a few jokes about, like that, you can just really, you just remake it like that, and you just make it more current so that audience can relate to it a little more.
Yeah, you sort of have to make cultural parallels.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon because, I know you watch foreign movies and they rated the foreign movie remake from the other remakes. And let's talk about why. Why are those different? Do they follow a different rule? What's the deal?
For that, would you say also that maybe different cultures make, different movies, and I think that's maybe one of the rules, is that they kind of address their own culture, so to speak, or...
But does the remake do that?
The remake, I think that's where the remake misses.
Yeah.
A lot of times, right?
What they do with the American remakes is that they take the story and they bring it over to America. They did that for The Killing recently. And...
Yeah, they make it more relatable to an American audience who might not be able to understand, this is the situation in France and this is why it's funny. So,
but
yeah.
You're going to watch that as an audience and go like, I don't know what that means. And so you lose the fact that it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So, because I'm sensing a little bit of disapproval over the transfer of culture, but I just want to point out, even in the translated versions, even the subtitles, you get already a little bit of transfer of culture.
Maybe a little, but you're still keeping, I think, the essence, in general, compared to remaking completely with even different actors and different,
Oh, even if it's the same actors, I mean, like honestly, Les Visiteurs, which was changing to the American remake. They kept the same actors.
Yes,
that's terrible.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. I find when you remake a foreign movie,